In a dark world, remember to be the light. Welcome to Black Swan Revelations. Here is your host, the Black Swan himself, Shane.
All right, welcome to Black Swan Revelations. Today we are continuing on with the origins of Jacob's trouble, and this is part 2. So if you like this kind of thing, stick around, make sure and subscribe, make sure and leave a comment, give me a thumbs up, all that good stuff. The reason why I wanted to do this series is I wanted to go back to the basics, because we've been talking a lot about the rapture. We've been talking a bit about the resurrection as well, the foundations, who we are in Christ, all this kind of stuff. But then the question inevitably comes up that is inevitable. That's what I meant to say. The idea that Christians must suffer through Jacob's trouble. We must endure through it. We must go through it. We must go through it. We are the remnant. We are Israel, us Christians. So we have to go through. We have to suffer through Jacob's trouble. And this is what people are saying. They're mixing things together. They're mixing Christianity. They're mixing the church with the program that God himself created that goes all the way back to Deuteronomy. And we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna uncover it. We're gonna go through it meticulously. We're gonna take our time on this. So yesterday we were in Deuteronomy 29. Today we're gonna be in Deuteronomy 30, but I'm just gonna kind of highlight a little bit of 29. And then we're going to jump into 30. And what we do is we just go through this verse by verse. Because I think, again, it's so important. It's so important. And then you got to keep thinking about, like, what is going on here? Is this in relation to the church? Because you have to remember that the church was kept secret as well. It was hidden. It wasn't talked about in the Old Testament. You could go to any Jew back in the day and ask them if we are going to live in heaven or if we are going to be joint heirs with the Messiah. And they would say, nope, it's for us. It's only for us. The Messiah is only for us. The blessings in Israel are only for us, no one else, all this kind of stuff. And instead the Gentiles are going to serve us and all this kind of stuff. That's what they'll say. So let's just dive into this and try and figure this out together, shall we? All right. This is Deuteronomy 29. So look at this here. Let's go over to verse 9. Keep therefore the words of this covenant and do them. This is Moses winding up his career. He's 120. He's about to die. And he's basically giving the last rites to Israel, basically just saying, this is what's going to happen to you. You're going to go into the land and all this kind of stuff. So God pressed it upon Moses' heart to tell them everything that's going to happen in the near future and in the distant future. Keep therefore the words of this covenant and do them, that ye may prosper in all that ye do. You stand this day, all of you, before your Lord, and your captains, your tribes, your elders, with all the men of Israel, your little ones, your wives, thy stranger that is in thy camp from the hewer of thy wood to draw of water, that thou shouldst enter into covenant with the Lord thy God. So who is this covenant for? It's for Israel. It's for the men of Israel. It's for their officers, their elders. It's your little ones. It's the hewers, all the strangers in your land. That's who it's for. And into his oath, which the Lord thy God maketh with thee this day. So this isn't for India. This isn't for Japan. This isn't for China. This is for Israel. That he may establish thee today for a people unto himself, that he may be unto thee a God, as he has said unto thee, and as he has sworn unto thy fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Neither with you do I only make this covenant and this oath, but with him that standeth here with us this day before the Lord, and also with him that is not here, as in future generations. All right, so let's continue down. Verse 19, and it come to pass that when he heareth the words of this curse, that he bless himself in his heart, saying, I shall have peace, though I walk in the imagination of mine heart, to add drunkenness to thirst. So Moses is saying, when you hear the words of this curse, because he's laying it all out, laying it thick, don't think that you're going to get off scot-free, basically, paraphrasing here. Because you can't have without the other. You can't have the blessing without the cursing. Meaning, if you don't follow the Lord in everything that was commanded by Moses, you're under a curse. The Lord will not spare him, but the anger of the Lord and his jealousy shall smoke against that man, and all the curses that are written in this book, not in another book from anywhere else, but what was written in this book, and more specifically in Deuteronomy. Because this is where we get the Song of Moses. This is where we get blessings and cursings and all this stuff. Everything is in here. Written in this book shall lie upon him, and the Lord shall blot out his name from under heaven. And the Lord shall separate him unto evil out of all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in the book of the law, so that the generation to come in the future of your children that shall rise up after you, and the stranger that shall come from a far land shall say, when they see these plagues of that land, and the sickness which the Lord had laid upon it, and the whole land, that it would be brimstone, salt, burning, that is not sown or beareth, nor any grass groweth, like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zuma and Zoboam, which the Lord overthrew. Even all the nations shall say, wherefore hath the Lord done thus unto this land? What meaneth the great anger? The men shall say, because they have forsaken the covenant of the Lord God of their fathers, which he made with them. Remember, this is before they went into the promised land that Moses is saying all this stuff. He's saying in the future, people are going to hiss at Israel saying, look at what happened to them. And they're going to ask the question, what happened? Well, this is what happened. They forsook the covenant, for they went and served other gods and worshipped them, gods they knew not, as they were scattered. And the anger of the Lord was kindled against this land to bring upon it all the curses that are written in this book. Which book? Deuteronomy. And the Lord rooted them out of their land in anger and in wrath and in great indignation, and cast them into another land, as it is this day. So this little piece here gives you a little bit of an indication that Moses may have said this, but somebody wrote it down for him, obviously, because Moses died before finishing this book. So somebody inserted this to say, as it is this day, most likely, and this is just my humble opinion, some of this was written most likely in captivity in Babylon. And again, I'm not a scholar, but it just looks like that because you have the word as it is this day. What? Well, they were kicked out of their land. They were captured. So whoever wrote that is saying as it is this day. So that's just important. The secret things belong unto the Lord our God, but those things which are revealed belong unto us and unto our children forever, that we may do the words of this law. And how do we know this? Because from time to time, we would get little snapshots of, if they wanted to explain where an area was, they would say something like the land of Dan. Well, the land of Dan wasn't given just yet. It didn't happen. The land of Reuben didn't happen just yet. Half tribe of Manasseh didn't get it. Gad didn't get it. I'm talking on the other side of the Jordan. But in this book, Moses is saying, or whoever wrote to finish this book, inserted parts like that to say that the territory that we're talking about is what eventually Reuben gets, and what Gad gets, and what the half tribe of Manasseh gets. Because think about it, they're not in the promised land yet. But Moses is talking about future. And someone also wrote that, look, what Moses talked about, this is exactly what happened, because look, it's like that today. We're actually not in our home anymore. So it's important. The more times you read the Old Testament, especially the first 5 books, you're going to realize that it wasn't always an eyewitness there, as in Genesis was written by Moses. And most likely he gathered a lot of the archives while he was in Egypt, because don't forget, Joseph's sons actually lived in Egypt as well. And Joseph lived in Egypt, meaning they would have access to archives, to records that related to their family history, specifically Ham and his ancestors that go all the way back to the flood and before the flood, all the way back to the Garden of Eden. So you just have to just put that on the shelf, that it was important to have access to these libraries, because otherwise then you're going to be like, well, how did Moses know all this stuff? How did he get all this stuff? Was it 100% a revelation, or was this oral tradition passed down from generation to generation, and then somebody took it upon themselves to write this stuff down? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself. And if they wrote it down, where did they store it? Most likely in Egypt. And there's also records of another area. I could be totally off. Alexandria, I'm not sure, but there was a place where there was a huge library. And what people would do is, when they would come from other countries, they would land, and then they would hire people, scribes, to write their stories down of some of their adventures that they had, and then they would store it in a library. And this library got burnt down, I think, 200 BC, something like that. It had all the records of the world, all the records, and they were toast. Anyways, that's a side note. I'm just trying to piece things together as we journey through. How did we get Jacob's trouble? Like, what happened? How did that happen? Or how is that going to come about? Let's go back. Continuing on. And the Lord rooted them out of their land in anger. Okay, so now we're going to Deuteronomy 30. And it shall come to pass, when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse. So in the future, you're going to be blessed, most likely during the time of King Solomon, and then pockets of time thereafter. Because they're basically, after King Solomon, the 2 tribes never came back together again as one unit. Because don't forget, the 10 northern tribes actually got carried away by the Assyrians. Okay, so it came to pass, when all these things shall come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee. So in the future, again, I got to keep emphasizing this. They're about to enter into the promised land for the first time. And Moses is telling them, look, when you guys get scattered onto all the nations of the earth, one day you're going to wish you were back home, because you're going to be worshiping iron, stone, trees, stubble, everything that was made by hands. You're going to worship gods that you have no idea about one day in the future. Why? Because you forsook my covenant. Who? Israel. Because otherwise, if you're saying it's us, then you're saying, if we mess up in Canada, we're going to get expelled, and we're going to get taken to Egypt, or we're going to get taken to Iraq, or we're going to get taken to whatever. And that happens for every single nation. If somebody messes up the Lord's covenant in India, they're going to go to China. If somebody messes up in China, they're going to go to Israel. If somebody messes up in Russia, they're going to get exported to Cuba. Like, it's ridiculous. Nobody thinks that way. But for some reason, here in Western society, Canada specifically, we think that we're part of this program by reading Deuteronomy. We're like, oh yeah, that's me. That's me. And when you start realizing that Moses is talking about Israel, you can begin to separate yourself and sit back and go, hang on here. This appears to me to be a little bit more historical and prophetical in nature as well. And it has nothing to do with me. Because Moses is clearly talking about Israel here. He's saying, when you forget the covenant, I'm going to scatter you. I'm going to scatter you. This is all leading to Jacob's trouble, by the way. Let's see. Let's read again. And it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither the Lord thy God has given thee, and shall return unto the Lord thy God, and shalt obey, and shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee, and shalt return unto the Lord thy God, and shall obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day. Thou, which is you, I'm talking to you people that are listening to this. This is Moses. That's what thou means. Thou means you. I'm talking to you. So if I say thou, that means I'm talking to you. So picture Moses specifically talking to his audience. And thy children with all thine heart and with all thine soul. So if you return to the Lord and shall obey his voice, then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity. Remember, they're captive outside of the land of Canaan, and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all nations whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. If any of thine be driven out unto the uttermost part of heaven, this is important here. If any of thine, any of your children, any of your future children that don't obey the covenant, if any of thine be driven out unto the utmost parts of heaven, from thence will the Lord thy God gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. Who's going to get them? God is. And we'll dive into, in another video, we're going to jump into the 2-stick prophecy with Ezekiel, but we got to get through this, and we also got to get through Jeremiah as well, and Isaiah, and Zechariah, and Joel. It's all over the place. This is all over the place, and it all goes back to Deuteronomy. So this is the core. What we're reading here is the core, because once you understand this, when we go into the other major prophets or minor prophets, you'll see this pattern emerge. He will fetch thee. God will fetch you. And the Lord thy God will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed. So again, he's going into the future to say, remember that time when your fathers possessed the land? Remember that after the time of Joshua? Remember the time during King Solomon's reign when you guys all lived in peace? Remember that? So once you're scattered, God will bring you back. And thou shalt possess it, and he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy fathers. So remember this. He will do thee good. Because remember, I said in another video, some people probably thought I was kidding. I said in another video that for just as much as God has joy in blessing Israel, he will have just as much joy destroying Israel. And you're going to start thinking, oh, is this anti-Semite? Is God anti-Semite? No, let's just read the scripture and you'll begin to understand the dualistic nature of God. When he says one thing, he's also meaning the opposite at the same time. For example, if God says, I swear in my wrath, they will not enter into my rest, by him swearing that, he's also saying that those that have entered into his rest, he will use that same wrath to keep you and to protect you in his fist. He will keep you. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the dualistic nature of God. When he says something like, when I swear in my wrath, you will not enter into my rest, you also have to consider that those that have entered into his rest, he will hang on to them with the same wrath to protect you. He will not let anybody pluck you out of his hand. It's important for this concept. That's why I said, for as much as he enjoys blessing, he will use that same joy to destroy Israel. And we'll go through it here. We'll go through it. So let's continue here. That the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion on thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. And if any of thine be driven out unto the uttermost parts, from thence the Lord thy God will gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. And the Lord thy God bring thee into the land, and will multiply thee above thy fathers. Okay, I read that. Okay, verse 6. And the Lord thy God will circumcise thine heart and the heart of thy seed, to love the Lord with all thine heart, with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. We'll come back to that. And the Lord thy God will put all these curses upon thine enemies. When? After he brings you back into the land. Because he's going to scatter you, and he's going to bring you back, and he's going to put all these curses. What curses? Plagues, pestilence, what did I say? Earthquakes, pestilences, water, bitterness, sickness, disease, tumors, leprosy, like the works. All those curses that were mentioned here are going to be put on your enemies. When? When he brings you back to this land. After he brings you back to this land. And thou shalt return and obey the voice of God and do all his commandments, which I command thee this day. So one day you're going to come back and you're going to obey the voice of the Lord. And it's going to be something that God does. God orchestrates. And the Lord thy God will make thee plenteous in every work of thine hand, and in the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy cattle, and the fruit of thy land, for good. There's that word again, for good. He's doing it for your good. When? After he brings you back from your captivity. For the Lord will again rejoice over thee for good, as he rejoiced over thy fathers. So he's going to rejoice over thee for good, as he rejoiced over thy fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He's going to use the same principle as he used on them, that he had joy with them, on you guys. He's going to bless you. If thou shalt hearken unto the voice. It's conditional. If thou shalt hearken unto the voice of the Lord, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in this book of the law. What book? Back to Deuteronomy. If thou turn unto the Lord thy God with all thine heart, with all thy soul. If thou shalt hearken, if thou shalt turn. For this commandment which I command this day is not hidden from thee, neither is it far off. It is not in heaven, that thou shalt say, who shall go up for us to heaven and bring it unto us, that we may hear it and do it. Neither is it beyond the sea, as in another nation is bringing you these words. these pearls, that thou shouldst say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it to us that we may hear it? Moses is telling you everything before it happens. So you can't say, who's going to go up to heaven and tell us about this? Who's going to go over the seas to tell us? It's already been spoken about. But the word is very nigh unto thee, in thy mouth and in thy heart, that thou mayest do it. See, I have set before thee this day life and good, and death and evil. In that I command thee this day to love the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments and his statutes and his judgments, that thou mayest live and multiply. So he wants you to do this today. Again, talking about before they're going into the promised land. And the Lord thy God shall bless thee in the land whither thou goest to possess it. But if thine heart turn away, so that thou wilt not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other gods and serve them, I denounce you unto this day, that ye shall surely perish, and that ye shall not prolong your days upon the land, whither thou passest over Jordan to go and to possess it. He's telling them, I will denounce you if you don't worship me. Meaning all the blessings that I'm giving you, they won't exist. Why? Because you're worshiping other gods and I have to kick you out. But don't worry, I'm bringing you back. But this is how it works. You don't worship me, you get kicked out. You get kicked out. Hopefully you understand this part. So now I call heaven and earth to record this day against you. For I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. So Moses is calling to record saying, look, I'm laying this out before you. There's no surprises here. You can't say, I didn't know. If only somebody brought this message from heaven. I didn't know. If only somebody brought this message on the other side of the sea. Because we don't know. We're ignorant. You can't say that because Moses is laying this all out. He's swearing before heaven and earth, saying that this is what will happen if you turn away from God. If you don't turn away from God, things will go well with you. And I think most people can understand this. They can go, oh, wow, this is kind of interesting now because you're starting to paint the picture. This is tied in with Israel. Yes. Worship one God, stay. Don't worship, go out. Get kicked out, get cast out. That's blessing and cursing, life, death. Let's continue. I call heaven and earth. Verse 20. That thou mayest love the Lord thy God, and that thou mayest obey his voice, and thou mayest cleave unto him, for he is thy life, and the length of thy days, that thou mayest dwell in the land which the Lord sware unto thy fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give them. So this alone should tell you you don't get a pass by simply just being Israel. If you worship other gods, because you're Israel, you're going to get kicked out. That's the deal that God has set up and that he told Moses. So you can't just live in the land rent-free, meaning you can't just do whatever you want because God is a jealous God. And that's the deal with Israel. He didn't make this deal with any other nation. Didn't make it with India. He didn't make it with France. He didn't make it with the United States of America. He didn't make it with Germany or China or Russia. He made it with Israel. Again, most people, I think this makes common sense, but sometimes you have to read Deuteronomy for this to make sense and go, oh, he's talking about Israel. And Moses spake all these things unto all Israel, and he said unto them, I am 120 years old this day. I can no more go out and come in. Also the Lord has said unto me, Thou shalt not go over this Jordan. The Lord thy God, he will go over before thee, and he will destroy those nations from before thee, and thou shalt possess them. And Joshua, he shall go over before thee, as the Lord hath said. And the Lord shall do unto them as he did to Sihon and to Og, the kings of the Amorites, and unto the land of them whom he destroyed. And he ended up giving those to, eventually he'll give them to Reuben, to the half tribe of Manasseh, and to Gad. And the Lord shall give them up before your face, that ye may do unto them according to all the commandments which I have commanded you. Be strong and of good courage, fear not, nor be afraid of them, for the Lord thy God, he is that goeth with thee, he will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. And Moses called unto Joshua, and said unto him in the sight of all Israel, Be strong and of a good courage, for thou must go with this people unto the land which the Lord has sworn unto their fathers to give them, and thou shalt cause them to inherit it. And the Lord, as he it is that goeth before thee, that doth goeth before thee, he will be with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee, neither forsake thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed. Moses wrote this law and delivered it unto the priests, the sons of Levi, that bear the ark of the covenant. So Deuteronomy, and all the elders of Israel. And Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years, in the solemnity of the year of release, in the Feast of Tabernacles, when all Israel is to come to appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, which later becomes Jerusalem, thou shalt read this law before all Israel in their hearing. Gather the people together, men and women, children, and thy stranger that is within thy gates. So we're talking about in the land of Israel, that they may hear and that they may learn and fear the Lord your God, and to observe all the words of this law, and that their children, which have not known anything, may hear and learn, so to fear the Lord your God as long as ye live in the land where ye go over Jordan to possess it. So this is all in relation to the land that they are about to possess, which is Canaan. And the Lord said unto Moses, Behold, thy days approach that thou must die. Call Joshua, present yourself in the tabernacle of the congregation, that I might give him a charge. And Moses and Joshua went and presented themselves in the tabernacle of the congregation. And the Lord appeared in the tabernacle in a pillar of a cloud, and the pillar of the cloud stood over the door of the tabernacle. And the Lord said unto Moses, Behold, thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, and this people will rise up and go a whoring after the gods of the strangers of the land, whither they go to be among them, and will forsake me and break my covenant which I have made with them. So God is giving Moses an inside scoop, saying, look, when you go to sleep with your fathers, these people are going to go whoring after the gods of the strangers of the land. Then my anger, because God is a jealous God, shall be kindled against them in that day. I will forsake them, and I will hide my face from them, and they shall be devoured, and many evils and troubles shall befall them, so that they will say in that day, are not these evils come upon us because our God is not amongst us? Like there's going to be one day in the future, and you can argue that it's here, that they're going to say the reason why this evil, why everyone is coming against us, is it feels like God isn't with us right now. This is why, because if he was with us, specifically in the temple, they wouldn't come near us. They wouldn't touch us. But isn't it because God isn't among us? That's what Moses is writing down here. It's not me making this up. And I will surely hide my face in that day for all the evils which they shall have wrought, in that they are turned unto other gods. So God's going to hide his face. Paul talks about blindness, a temporary blindness. There's a reason for it. Now, therefore, write ye this song for you and teach it to the children of Israel. Put it in their mouths, that this song may be a witness for me against the children of Israel. For when I shall have brought them into the land which I swear unto their fathers, that floweth with milk and honey, and they shall have eaten and filled themselves and waxen fat, then they will turn unto other gods, plural, and serve them and provoke me and break my covenant. And it shall come to pass, when many evils and troubles are befallen them, that this song that I'm getting Moses to write shall testify against them as a witness, for it shall not be forgotten out of their mouths of their seed. For I know their imagination which they go about, even now, before I brought them into the land which I swear, which basically started ever since they left Egypt. Moses therefore wrote this song the same day. So again, we're getting a hint that, and this is what makes it hard for some people to understand this. They just read this in chronological, but look at this. So if God is saying, Moses, I want you to write the song, and in verse 22, the writer is saying, Moses therefore wrote this song the same day and taught it to the children of Israel. That is an editorial comment from someone, could be Joshua, that wrote this in, saying, look, I'm basically summarizing everything that Moses said, and I'm also going to give you a little bit of a hint as to when it happened. I'm just going to inject every once in a while. So right here, verse 22, Moses therefore wrote this song the same day and taught it to the children of Israel. That's someone writing it on behalf of Moses. Could have been one of Aaron's sons, for all we know. Most likely. I would venture it's either Joshua or it's one of Aaron's sons. Let's continue. And he gave Joshua, the son of Nun, there we go. Most likely Joshua wrote this. The son of Nun, a charge, and said, be strong and of courage, for thou shalt bring the children of Israel into the land which I swear unto them, and I will be with thee. Just I'm pointing the needle. Most likely Joshua. Now again, it could have been a priest. Could have been one of the priests of the sons of Aaron. And it came to pass, when Moses had made an end of writing the words of this law in a book until they were finished, that Moses commanded the Levites which bear the ark of the covenant, saying, take this book of the law and put it in the side of the ark. So put it inside the ark of the covenant. What? Deuteronomy. Put it in the side of the ark of the covenant, the Lord your God, that it may be there for a witness against thee. For I know thy rebellion, thy stiff neck. Behold, while I'm yet alive with you this day, ye have been rebellious against the Lord, and how much more after my death. Gather unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, that I may speak these words in their ears, and call heaven and earth to record against them. For I know that after my death ye will utterly corrupt yourselves, and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will befall you in the latter days. Latter days. It's important. Because ye will do evil in the sight of the Lord, and to provoke him to anger through the work of your hands. And Moses spake in the ears of all the congregation of Israel this song until they were ended. So in the next chapter, we hear the song. And maybe I'll make a video about that because it's important. It's actually pretty cool. Lots of stuff that pertain to the latter days. Not just yet, but you could almost say that we're getting very close. We're if we're not there, we're approaching the latter days. Like we're so close. Like you could build an argument that we're here, because Israel came back in 1947. They have no idea who they are. They have selective amnesia. I say selective because if you ask any of the Israelis today, anything about Jesus Christ, it's like, no, that's not who we follow. We follow God. We follow Jehovah God. But Jesus said, if you know me, you're going to know the Father. If you know the Father, you're going to know me. So right now, there's a temporary blindness put on Joseph. He doesn't know who he is. It's not his fault. He's blinded right now. Until when? Until all these nations come to try and wipe them out. And God made a promise. He said, if it weren't for the fact that I fear that these nations are going to get drunk on the idea, paraphrasing, on the idea that they will wipe you out, I'm not going to let it happen. I'm going to keep them. Not because of their righteousness, but because I don't want nations to jump up and down all giddy because they destroyed the nation of Israel. And there were pockets where people were excited that Israel was being defeated. Nations like the Edomites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, they got excited when Israel got captured by the Assyrians, and they got really, really excited when the Babylonians captured the Israelites. And a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, many, how about many? Many Israelites fled to Egypt, to Edom, to Moab, to Ammon, to be saved from the Babylonians. And when they got to Edom, the Edomites basically hugged them with open arms. Welcome to Edom. We're so happy you're here. Here, put this bracelet on, and here, put this bracelet on, and put these bracelets on your ankles. And Israel's like, wait a minute. These are handcuffs. What are you doing? Oh, I'm taking you to Babylon, and I'm going to go rent a prostitute because you're going to be worth one night's sleep for a prostitute. And just for good measure, I'll probably take your wife and trade her in for a brand new pair of shoes. And then we're going to go and ransack your home because you're no longer in it. So come this way, please. That's what Edom did. They broke the brotherly covenant and captured Israelites and took them to Babylon for a reward. And God's writing all this stuff down. Don't think I don't remember what you guys did to Israel. And Ammon did the same thing. Don't think I'm not going to remember this. And then Moab did the same thing. You broke the brotherly covenant, and I'm going to punish you one day. And he's going to punish any of the nations that come against Israel, that think that they're mightier than Israel, that think that they're better, and they're like, Israel needs to get wiped off the map. They should be in fear and trembling for saying such matters, because God is the avenger of those that he loves. So remember that. Hang on to that. It gets better. I know it gets a little dark and gloomy because Moses is almost on his deathbed. He's still healthy. His eyes were perfect. His strength was there. Everything. He's just 120. Lived a perfect age. And he said, I know what's going to happen. You're going to go whoring after other gods. I know that. God told me all this stuff. But there's a plan in place. There's a plan in place. So we'll talk a little bit more about that plan. But hopefully you get a little bit of a better understanding of why we got Jacob's trouble. It all comes from Deuteronomy. This is the heart of it. And it's important to read Deuteronomy to understand what's going to happen in the latter days. Future. King Solomon hints at this as well. When they're about to dedicate the temple, King Solomon raised his two hands up in the air, and he's dedicating the temple to the Lord. He's basically saying, like, really, honestly, can this building that I've created, because my father wanted to create a temple but couldn't because there was no peace? It wasn't because he was a wicked man. Some people say, oh, it's because of Bathsheba that's why. No, God forgave him. It was because there was no peace. All these nations were coming against Israel. They were not in peace. It wasn't until King Solomon came in that there was complete peace for all 12 tribes. all 12 tribes. So Solomon is saying, as he's raising his hands and dedicating like 100,000 plus oxen and sheep and everything under the sun, basically saying, can this house really hold God? No, it can't. But I want to dedicate this temple to be basically a house of prayer, so that people will think about this place and go, this is where God is. This is where he dwells and all this kind of stuff. And whenever you turn in that general direction, it'll be a reminder of God and his promises and everything. And Moses and Solomon even became prophetic. He said that when you guys get scattered, Lord, forgive them. When they turn in this direction towards this temple, forgive them. And when they're fighting wars in other nations, whatever, fight for them, fight for their battles, all this kind of stuff. And can you imagine everybody's all in unison to have Solomon as their king? And King Solomon is saying, basically, when you get carried away to another land, Lord, remember them when they turn to this direction, to this temple. So they're probably all confused. Like, what do you mean? We're here. This is the pinnacle. We are at the top. We've never been better. We've never had a better king. Look at this. Look at all this wealth coming through here. 666 talents of gold every single year coming in. All the nations coming to Israel to learn, so that Solomon can teach them about ants, trees, insects, bugs, all kinds of stuff. We've peaked. But Solomon knows what Deuteronomy said, that when they get fat, as in they're taken care of, they will forget their God. That's what Solomon was seeing into the future. And he said, Lord, remember them when they turn this way. So it was like a prophetic prayer, that when they're in another land, if they pray this prayer, that the Lord will hear them. So we know that Israel gets kicked out. They eventually get captured by Assyria. The 10 northern tribes go. The 2 southern tribes get captured to Babylon for 70 years. And after the 70th year, Daniel's checking his watch, his wristwatch, and he's like, time's up. Time's up. It's 70 years. Why aren't we going back? How come we're not back in the land yet? What did I miss? What did Jeremiah say that I missed? Daniel was all confused, and then Gabriel showed up. Said, Daniel, you're highly favored, and I'm gonna teach you everything. I had a hard time getting through. I was battling the Prince of Persia, whoever, and I was stuck. And then Michael came and allowed me to get free. So I came here to tell you, because the first day that you started praying, I came here. I was on my way, but I got stuck. I got hung up. So anyways, I'm going to tell you what's going on and what's going to happen in the future. I'm going to tell you everything. It's not 70 years only. There's a dualistic prophecy. It's 70 weeks. Why? Because you guys never kept the Sabbath. You never let the land rest, ever. You never did it. So I'm going to have to let the land rest for 70 years. But on top of it, it's going to be 490 years. So this has to come about later. And most of that was fulfilled. There was only 1 week left. And that got suspended after Stephen got stoned. Why? Because he said, don't hold this against them. And Jesus stood up. I think he was minutes from coming down to earth to begin Jacob's trouble. But Jesus sat back down. He stopped. Why? Because Stephen said, don't hold this against them. He looked up to heaven, saw Jesus standing at the right hand of God, and said, wait, basically, don't do it yet. Don't. Not yet. And this matches up with a parable where the Holy Spirit says, give me one more year, because after 3 years or so, there's no fruit. And the Holy Spirit says, give me one more year. And this one more year, I believe anyway, lines up with everything moving over to Paul to actually start preaching to the Gentiles, and then suspending Israel's program, suspending it temporarily for a future date. And then there's 1 week to come. That's why we believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. It has nothing to do with us. But I'm going to continue to build this case. I don't want to just inject my thoughts and everything, but I want you to get a snapshot of what's going on here, how we get this stuff. And we're going to go into Jeremiah. We'll probably go into Moses' song. So the Song of Moses, read that first, and then we're going to go into Jeremiah, and this is where we get introduced to Jacob's trouble officially. We're going to go through that, and then we're going to go through Daniel, and we're going to go through some of the minor prophets and Isaiah, and hopefully we could start piecing this stuff together so that you look at it and you go, hang on here 1 second. This has nothing to do with the body of Christ. This is the body of Christ. The church is a secret plan that was designed before anything was created, before the heavens and the earth was created, before the devil was created. It was a plan, predestination, that we would be joint heirs in Christ. This is Jesus' plan. Why? Because his name is above every name. And God gave the church over to God. He said, this is your baby. It's like, okay, I'll do this, but I also want to do this. I want to help restore Israel. All right. That's it for today. Hopefully you got something out of it. If you have, subscribe to this channel. Make sure and leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Leave a thumbs up. Don't forget, you could always donate to this channel as well. If you got something out of it, you can donate a couple bucks, $5, whatever you feel like. You don't have to donate. You don't have to. But if you felt like you got something out of this, then subscribe to this channel, donate, go to my description in my on my YouTube channel. You'll see the description. You can click on the PayPal link and you can donate. Like I said, donate whatever you want. So awesome. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in another video. Bye for now.